The first time she said my name, it wasn't just a word. It was a promise I wasn't ready to keep, and a feeling I'll never escape. It started with something ordinary. A late afternoon, a quiet office, and the kind of silence that hums between people who haven't yet learned each other's rhythms. I wasn't supposed to be there long. Just a quick delivery, a favor for a friend. But fate has a way of turning simple errands into turning points. She was behind the desk when I walked in. A woman with calm in her posture but storms in her eyes. Mid-40s, maybe. Confident, composed, the kind of beauty that doesn't ask for attention but commands it anyway. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands brushing against her cheek when she looked up. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just smiled. A small, knowing kind of smile, as if she'd already read everything I wasn't saying. Then she asked, "You're here for the files?" Her voice, that was the first thing that really caught me. Low, steady, with a trace of warmth that felt like home and danger all at once. I nodded, trying to remember why my throat suddenly felt tight. She handed me a folder and, for a second, our fingers brushed. Not intentionally, not dramatically, but it was enough to make the air between us feel heavier. She noticed it too. I could tell by the way she looked at me after, a flicker of something unspoken crossing her expression before she cleared her throat and turned away. That's how it began. Not with a confession, not with flirtation, but with a moment that lingered longer than it should have. I left the office that day telling myself it was nothing. Just a polite exchange. Just admiration for someone older, wiser, out of reach. But her face stayed with me. The way her voice softened when she spoke. The calm way she moved, measured, assured, unhurried. When I closed my eyes that night, I could still hear her saying, "Be careful on your way out." It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them. Like she meant it. Like she already knew how easily I could fall. I told myself not to go back. I told myself people like her, women with that kind of quiet grace, didn't look twice at people like me. But the truth is, I didn't stand a chance from the moment she said my name. Not yet, not in that first meeting. But the way she looked at me made me wonder how it would sound coming from her lips. And deep down, I think I already knew. When it finally happened, I wouldn't be able to walk away, that I told myself it was coincidence. The second time I saw her. But deep down, I think I wanted it to happen. It was a week later. I had to return for another delivery, though part of me knew I could have sent someone else. Still, there I was, pretending it was just work. She was standing by the window this time, sunlight cutting through the blinds and scattering across her hair. She turned as I walked in, that same composed smile curving on her lips, the kind of smile that made everything else in the room seem unnecessary. "You again," she said softly, almost amused. Her tone wasn't teasing, not exactly, but there was warmth in it, recognition, and that's when I realized how much I'd missed that voice. "I guess they like sending me here," I replied, trying to sound casual, though my pulse had other plans. She tilted her head, studying me for a heartbeat too long. Then she nodded toward the table. "Leave it there," she said. Her words were ordinary, but the silence that followed wasn't. It was filled with something neither of us was naming yet. As I set the file down, I felt her presence behind me. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel her. The faint scent of jasmine. The warmth of her breath, barely brushing the edge of my awareness. I turned slightly. Our eyes met and stayed there. It wasn't supposed to last. Just a look, a simple exchange between two people who happened to be in the same room. But her gaze didn't waver. It was steady, unflinching, like she was trying to understand me without asking a single question. And in that glance, something shifted. She was older, more sure of herself. Yet there was vulnerability in her eyes, like she was fighting the same pull I was. I wanted to look away, but couldn't. I didn't want to. Her hand brushed a pen on the desk, absently. The motion was small, graceful, distracting. I caught myself wondering what her hands would feel like if they lingered instead of passing. That scared me a little, how easily my thoughts drifted there. She cleared her throat first, breaking the silence, though not the spell. "You're quiet," she said, the corner of her mouth lifting. I smiled faintly. You make it hard to think. It slipped out before I could stop it, a truth disguised as a joke. For a moment, she just looked at me. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, soft, genuine, unguarded. And that laugh did something I wasn't prepared for. It made me want to know everything about her, what made her smile like that, what she looked like when she wasn't holding back. As I left the office that day, I caught her watching me. Not with curiosity anymore, but with something that looked a lot like hesitation. I didn't know it then, but that look would be the start of everything that followed. After that day, the silence between us changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full of awareness, of thoughts neither of us dared to say out loud. I started finding reasons to stop by more often. Small things, updates, follow-ups, questions I could have easily asked through someone else. She never called me out on it. Maybe because she knew. Maybe because she wanted to. The more time I spent there, the more I realized how different she was from anyone I'd known. She carried herself with the kind of stillness people earn, the kind built from lessons and heartbreak, from years of learning when to speak and when silence says more. Sometimes, while she worked, I'd catch her tucking a strand of hair behind her ear or pausing mid-sentence to think. Her brow furrowing slightly, the corner of her lip pressed against her thumb. Those tiny gestures did more to me than any grand display could. One afternoon, she asked if I wanted coffee. It was nothing really, just a casual offer. But something about the way she said it felt different. Like she was opening a door. Just a little. We sat by the window, the city quiet outside, the smell of coffee between us. She asked about my work, my plans, where I saw myself in 5 years. Her questions weren't small talk. They were careful, intentional. She listened like she wanted to understand who I was, not just what I did. And I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone. About feeling stuck. About wanting something more than just routines and deadlines. She listened, really listened, and when I finished, she looked at me like she saw more than I'd meant to reveal. You think too much for your age, she said softly, smiling in that half-teasing, half-tender way she had. Maybe, I replied, but I think you do too. That made her laugh quietly, eyes dropping to her cup. Touché, she murmured. There was a moment after that, a long, wordless one, where neither of us looked away. The world outside moved on, cars passing, people walking, but inside that small office, it felt like time folded around us. I noticed her hand resting on the table, fingers just inches from mine. The distance was deliberate, a line drawn carefully between us. But my heartbeat didn't seem to care. I wanted to reach out, not to cross that line, just to feel the nearness of it. To let her know she wasn't the only one pretending this was simple. But I didn't. Instead, I just memorized the moment. The faint scent of coffee, the sound of her breathing, the way her gaze softened when she looked at me. Later that night, I replayed it all. Every word, every pause, every almost touch. And somewhere between memory and longing, I realized what scared me most. I was starting to crave the silence between us more than the words themselves. It happened on a Friday evening. One of those dusky hours when the world feels half awake, half asleep. The office was quieter than usual. Most people had already left, their laughter and footsteps fading down the hall, leaving behind only the faint hum of air conditioning and the soft tick of the clock. I'd come by to drop off a report she needed before Monday. That was the excuse, anyway. The truth was simpler. I just wanted to see her. When I knocked on the door, she looked up from her desk, surprise flickering into something gentler. You're still here, I shrugged. You said it was urgent. She smiled faintly. I might have exaggerated. The way she said it, quiet, careful, made my chest tighten. She was different that evening, softer somehow. Her blazer was off, her sleeves rolled up, her hair falling loose over her shoulders. She looked less like the woman who ran an office, and more like the woman she was when no one was watching. I placed the report on her desk. Then I guess I didn't have to rush. You didn't, she said, her voice lowering. But I'm glad you did. For a moment, the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was magnetic. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, feel the pull of something we both kept pretending wasn't there. She looked at me, not like she was studying, but remembering, as if she'd already spent time thinking about what this might mean. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. I nodded. "Why do you keep coming back?" It wasn't an accusation. It was curiosity mixed with a kind of fear. I thought about lying, about saying it was for work or convenience, but I'd had enough of pretending. "Because the days I don't see you," I said, "feel quieter than they should." Her breath caught just slightly, and for a second, I saw it, that same truth reflected back at me. She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of a paper on her desk. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because I might start believing them." There it was, the line we both knew existed, spoken aloud for the first time. I didn't move closer, but the distance between us felt fragile. One step, one word, and everything could change. She stood then, smoothing her blouse as if steadying herself. "You should go," she said, though her voice trembled on the edges. I didn't argue. I just nodded, slow, reluctant, and turned toward the door. Before I reached it, she said quietly, "Thank you for bringing it." I glanced back. Her eyes met mine, full of everything she wasn't saying. And that's when I knew. Whatever this was, neither of us could keep pretending it didn't exist. After that evening, everything changed. Not in words, not in actions, but in the quiet spaces between them. We both pretended nothing had happened, that I hadn't said too much, that she hadn't almost said it back. Days passed, then weeks. I stopped finding excuses to visit. I told myself it was better this way, that putting distance between us would make it fade. But it didn't. It just made everything sharper. I missed her voice, the way she'd glance up from her work, catch me watching, and shake her head with that small, secret smile. I missed the steadiness she carried, the kind that made me feel anchored when the rest of my life felt uncertain. But more than that, I missed the possibility, the unspoken pull that made even silence feel full. One afternoon, I saw her by chance in a cafe near the office. She was sitting by the window, reading something on her tablet, her hair pinned up loosely. She didn't notice me at first. She looked lighter, peaceful, and for a moment I convinced myself she was better without me around, that maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Then she looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. It was just a second, one heartbeat, but it was enough. Her expression softened, and I saw everything I'd been trying to forget. The recognition, the hesitation, the longing she tried to hide behind composure. I walked in before I could talk myself out of it. She didn't look away. "Hi," I said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. She smiled, polite, practiced, the kind you use when you're trying not to feel too much. "It's been a while." "Yeah," I said. "I wasn't sure if I should come back," she finished for me. I nodded. She looked down at her coffee. "You did the right thing." But her voice didn't sound convinced. "I don't know," I said honestly, "because it doesn't feel right. None of this does." She didn't reply. She just stared at her cup, tracing her fingertip along the rim. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "I told myself distance would help, but it only made me think about what I'm trying to avoid." The air between us grew still again, that familiar, dangerous stillness. I wanted to reach for her hand, but didn't. I wanted to say everything, that I couldn't stop thinking about her, that her absence filled every room I entered, but I stayed quiet. She looked at me then, her voice trembling just slightly. "You're too young to get caught up in someone like me." "Maybe," I said softly, "but I already am." For a long moment, she didn't breathe. Then she looked away, blinking fast, her composure cracking just enough to reveal what she'd been holding back. When she finally spoke, her words were barely audible. "You shouldn't have come." But her eyes said the opposite. And that was the cruel truth about distance. It doesn't protect you from what's meant to find you again. The next few days were unbearable. Everything felt unfinished. Every word left hanging. Every look half-held. I tried to focus on work, on friends, on the noise of the world, but nothing silenced the sound of her voice in my head. So I went back. I didn't plan it, it just happened. My feet carried me to her door like they'd been waiting for permission my heart had already given. The office was almost empty again, same as that Friday night weeks ago. The light was dim, her desk lamp the only glow in the room. She was writing something, her glasses low on her nose, and when she looked up, I saw surprise turn quickly into something else. Something softer, almost scared. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "I know. Then why are you?" I hesitated, trying to find the words that wouldn't sound like mistakes. "Because I don't like pretending anymore." Her lips parted slightly, as if to answer, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned back, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for days. "Do you even know what you're saying?" she asked. "I do." She shook her head, almost to herself. "This is complicated. I know that too." She stood up, and for the first time there was no desk between us. Just space, fragile, electric. I could feel every inch of it. "People will talk," she murmured. "I don't care what they say. You should. But I don't." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was alive. I could hear the faint hum of the lights, the ticking clock, the uneven rhythm of our breaths. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a heartbeat, I saw everything she'd been holding back. The fear, the wanting, the quiet ache that matched mine. When she spoke again, her voice was almost a whisper. "You don't understand what this could cost." I took a step closer. "Maybe not, but I know what it's already costing me." Trying not to feel it. Her eyes glistened, though she blinked the tears back before they could fall. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "Maybe it's supposed to be hard," I said softly. "Maybe that's how we know it's real." She looked down, her hands trembling just slightly. Then she said it, my name. Just that. 2 syllables. But the way she said it, low, breaking, almost reverent, undid me completely. It wasn't just my name anymore. It was a confession, a surrender. I stepped forward, close enough to feel her warmth. She didn't move away. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes lifted, searching mine. And in that look, every wall we'd built began to crumble. Then she whispered again, softer this time, "You should go." But her voice didn't sound certain. I wanted to tell her I couldn't, that the moment she said my name I was already gone. Lost to her, to this, to everything that wasn't her. Instead, I just nodded, because I knew she needed the space. And as I walked away, her voice lingered behind me. My name still echoing in her tone. A memory I knew I'd carry for the rest of my life. After that night, everything between us became quieter, but never the same. We didn't talk about what happened. We didn't need to. It lingered in every glance, every carefully chosen word, every silence that stretched a little too long. When I saw her next, it was late again. She stood by the window, the city lights painting soft gold against her skin. She didn't turn when I entered, just said softly, "You came back." "I didn't know if I should," I admitted. She smiled faintly. "You always say that." There was no accusation in her tone, just warmth and something deeper, sorrow maybe, the kind that only comes when the heart already knows the answer it's about to give. I stood beside her, close enough to feel the warmth from her shoulder, but not touching. Not yet. Outside, the rain had started, slow, steady drops tracing lines down the window. The sound filled the silence between us. "I've been thinking," she said finally, "about what we're doing, about what we could lose." I nodded. "I know. And I'd still choose you." Her eyes closed for a second, like the words hurt, even though she'd wanted to hear them. "You think love is enough?" she whispered. "I think it has to be." She turned then, really turned, facing me fully. There were tears she didn't bother to hide now. "You're too young to understand how heavy love can get," she said. "It's beautiful at first, until the world starts asking questions you can't answer." I took her hand, gently, tracing my thumb across her fingers. "Then let them ask. I'll answer with you." Her hand tightened slightly, a reflex, a flicker of the heart before reason stepped in. She looked down at our hands and smiled. A sad, tender kind of smile that felt like both a beginning and an ending. "You make it sound simple," she said. "Maybe it is," I replied. "Maybe we're the ones making it complicated." She laughed softly, the sound breaking halfway into a sigh. "You don't make it easy to walk away. Then don't." For a long moment, she just looked at me, eyes searching, memorizing. Then she reached up, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. Her touch was feather-light, trembling at the edges. "You'll move on," she said gently. "You'll find someone your own age, someone who doesn't have to hide how she feels. I don't want someone else." She smiled again one last time. "You think that now." And then, for the first time, she leaned in, just close enough that I could feel her breath against my cheek, close enough that the space between us vanished into something that wasn't quite a kiss, but felt just as permanent. When she stepped back, her eyes glistened in the dim light. "Goodbye," she whispered. But even then, my name followed, soft, aching, final. And I realized something in that moment. Some names aren't meant to be called forever. Some are meant to be remembered, like echoes of the person who changed you without ever truly being yours. The rain fell harder outside as I walked away, her voice still in my head. My name, her tone, the sound that started everything, and the one that would never really fade.